Hello, welcome to the IP Fabric webinar. Today we're going to be talking about the new IP Fabric Ansible collection that allows you to work with Ansible at network devices as well as IP Fabric over the API within Ansible itself, so you don't need to leave the Ansible ecosystem to integrate with our product. I'm joined by Martin today. Martin, can you give a brief introduction of yourself?
Yep. Hello, my name is Martin Moucka. I work with Red Hat. I'm a product owner of network reliability workstream under IT network team. Our primary responsibilities are network automation, monitoring, self-service tools, and office infrastructure.
Awesome. Let's get into it. So IP Fabric have released a Ansible collection on GitHub, as well as within Ansible Galaxy, so that we can interact with the IP Fabric ecosystem to pull information such as starting snapshots, cloning snapshots, unloading snapshots, as well as getting information from the multitude of different vendors that we collect information from, such as Cisco, Juniper, etc. We've got a number of plugins out of the box, such as an inventory plugin, a lookup plugin, and our modules, which allow for snapshot manipulation as well as table gathering information from tables such as NTP information, syslog, BGP, etc., which is very handy to use. Any questions, Martin, before we go into the demo?
Why did actually IP Fabric decided to create their own Ansible collection?
Yes, so we found a lot of our customers writing code to interact with the IP Fabric product. So previously, colleagues of mine released the Python SDK, which allows us to natively use Python easily to get information from the IP Fabric product, to do automations with IP Fabric, or use the data to push use the data provided by IP Fabric to push into external tools such as ServiceNow, Netbox, Nautobot, and the likes. So we thought it would be good to introduce an IP Fabric Ansible collection so that it makes it easier for our customers to use Ansible and use the Ansible ecosystem to automate their network devices using the information that we have.
Okay, sounds good.
Right?
Can see a lot of use cases for us as well.
Yeah, good.
Straight away.
So are you using IP Fabric internally with Ansible to do any automations?
We do. At this moment, primary connections to IP Fabric are done, as you mentioned, through the Python SDK.
Yep.
But also some of the information is pulled into Ansible playbooks that we are using. So I hope that this Ansible collection actually will make it easier for us to maintain that and even progress further with that kind of automation.
That's great. That is good. Good to hear. Especially use of the Python SDK. It's a great tool to leverage the IP Fabric information. So let's have a look. We're at the minute we're on Ansible. We're on GitHub. You can find us via Community Fabric and then IP Fabric -Ansible, but we're also in Ansible Galaxy, and we've released our initial version on there a few days ago. So let's jump into VS Code and install some dependencies. And first off, we're going to make sure we get the installation command provided by Ansible Galaxy, so that we can install that within our environment. So let's head to the terminal. So first off, we need to install Ansible. How I'm going to do this is that I have a requirements file for pip that will install a bunch of dependencies that are required for this demo, as well as using the Ansible collection. So for example, we need the IP Fabric SDK to be able to leverage the Ansible collection, and we also need Ansible installed. We will need Paramiko for SSHing the devices and configuring some commands for the last part of the demonstration. So first we'll install those dependencies, pip install, and we'll select those dependencies. Shouldn't take long, it's pretty quick. And once all those are installed, we should have Ansible ready to go so that we can run the Ansible Galaxy Collection install command. It's just finishing up. There we go. So now we can paste that Ansible Galaxy Collection command in there. Now Ansible's installed. This will install the Ansible Galaxy Collection. So that's great. What I'm going to do is quickly deactivate and reactivate the virtual environment just so it makes sure that everything's good and loaded into our user environment. So first off, what I'd like to show is the ability to get snapshot information, actually use the dynamic inventory capabilities that we provide. Now, you might need a dynamic inventory when you want to automate some network devices that you want to have in a centralized location and pull that inventory every time you run a playbook, so that if something changes centrally that you can get it. But a lot of times our customers don't have a source of truth or a central repository, or they don't have an inventory file good to go when they start their automation journey, for example with Ansible. So we've provided this dynamic inventory, and from initial discovery using IP Fabric, a customer has an inventory that's good to go. There is one requirement with our Ansible collection, is that you need a token, an API token ready to go. So it's easy, we go to settings, API tokens, and create a token here. I've already created one, so I won't do that now, but I'll show you how to use it. So we can see in here there's a brief example at the bottom of what we can do. So we provide a plugin, we provide the credentials, and then there's some options down the bottoms to do different filters, etc. And I'll show those as we go. So let's go into our terminal and we'll create a new file called ipfinventory.yaml. Now we want plugin, community fabric, fabric.ansible.inventory. And now we need our token information that was previously created. Now for me, I have this copied in another page, so I'll paste that in. Obviously nothing secret here to hide, and it's all local anyway. So I'll paste that in. You can provide the credentials, but you can also use Vault to encrypt those credentials, or you could use environment variables. We use environment variables as well, so you can check the documentation for that. So this is all we need to get going with an Ansible inventory, which is pretty straightforward. Do you know the command to test an inventory, Martin?
Not really from the top of my head, to be honest.
Yeah, so it's Ansible inventory, and then we select the inventory file, and then we just do --list. That presents the dynamic inventory over the CLI so we can see it on the standard output. So we can see here that by default it will go to IP Fabric, use the latest snapshot, and get the information for the devices that are there, and set some information such as the Ansible host, dev type, etc. And this is all information that's provided within the IP Fabric UI within the inventory devices table. So everything here is returned on the within the dynamic inventory. What's good is that you can use this information for automation going forward. So for example, we're passing in using group vars an Ansible password, a password and a username, so that we can SSH to that device. We're doing that in group vars. If we just go into here, group vars, and we've got some credentials here that apply to all of our devices. This can be vaulted, environment variable, and everything like that. So what we want to do is, for our demonstration going forward, and it demonstrates our capability in using the data from IP Fabric to do something, is Ansible needs to know what device type to automate. So for example, if it's a Cisco device, it uses a different module. to log into that device, and we can do that by specifying the Ansible underscore network underscore OS variable. To do that, we can use the compose functionality of dynamic inventories to then set a variable called network Ansible network underscore OS, and we can specify using Ginger here what key we want to get from this dictionary that we want to pass into this variable. So we want to select family, so we can select family here. Oh, and then we save that, and if we rerun now, we should see a new variable called Ansible underscore network OS, and then it's equal to the family now. Now Ansible knows what this device type is, and it's good to go when we start automating the device. Any questions so far, Martin?
Sounds good and really powerful.
Yeah.
Maybe just one question. I know that you mentioned for the groups that you will talk about that later on, so I don't want to maybe jump into the future when you start talking about that. But based on what keys can we define the groups?
Yeah, so that's actually that's a good topic because it leads on to my next one now. Is the compose function allows us to set new variables, but maybe you want to group devices by something within IP Fabric that we want to automate. So let's say site, you want to automate by site. If we wanted to do that, we provide the ability to select, be able to group devices by different site. And how we do that is we do keyed groups, and then we do key, and then we select the dictionary, the key within the dictionary responded. So let's say we want to group it by site name, so we find the key for site name, so it's just site name. And this asks for two parameters. It's asks for a prefix, so you might want to put in here site and then the separator. And this could be like an underscore, for example. So now your site, your devices will be listed by site underscore and then the site name. So if you want to then automate it going forward in a playbook, that's what you would reference in your hosts bit at the top of your playbook. So if we run that again now, I only have one site in this organization, but we should see that now there's a group called site underscore netsim underscore lab, and that contains all these hosts.
That's actually really powerful if you can use any key that from that dictionary that you showed before.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
with that you can point your automation, for example, to the devices with specific version or specific platform. Can be very useful, for example, for security patching and other use cases.
Yeah. You can also do things like, for example, I've got the groups here. So you can create a group called Cisco iOS, and then you can do Ginger within that as well. So you can do family equals iOS, and it'll create all the Cisco devices within that one. So it'll only match on certain devices. So it's very powerful. For our use case, we want to actually have groups called family because we want to apply different, for our use case, our different families of devices have different credentials. So in my group files here you can see that I have EOS, iOS, Junos, and they all have different credentials. It's just because they're spelt a bit different, and we need to specify different bits and pieces. So it allows us to separate control, and how we can go is change the key to family. I'll just have an empty string here and an empty string here. And when we run this, we should get a few new groups that match. So we got a Junos group, so that will match the Junos group vars. And then we've got, if we scroll up, we've got an iOS group that matches iOS devices and an EOS. So you can have different, you could group them as much as you want, and variable precedence is quite good. So you could even override different variables, etc. So that's inventory. Any questions about inventory at the minute?
Oh, I'm fine, thank you.
Yeah, good. Right, so I'll move on to some modules. Let's go to our documentation. modules, we have a few. We have snapshot, snapshot underscore info, and table underscore info. Snapshot info is a really basic playbook. It allows you to get the basic information about a snapshot that's either loaded or unloaded. So how many devices, what version, how many licensed devices, the name of it, etc. And that looks like, if I just close down these tabs, it looks like the following. So I've passed in provider because that's in a group vars, but that just contains the credentials like HTTP address and the token. But again, we can use environment variables going forward if you wish. We can specify, I'm just specifying local host to run this from because we want to run it from the local host. And we want to get the snapshot info. So if we run that, so Ansible playbook, and we'll do pb.1, and we'll just use verbose so it shows us what's returned in the CLI. So you can see here it's returned a bunch of information, and this is a list of all the information that the API has about the loaded snapshots or unloaded snapshots. So we can see when it was last changed, the device added count was 6, when the snapshot ended, etc. But if you want to get a specific snapshot, let's say this one here, I've just copied the snapshot ID. We can provide a snapshot ID, paste that in, run it, and you're good to go. You can get that singular snapshot information. Could you see where this might be useful, Martin?
Well, I'm trying to wrap my hand about that. Not sure from this point where we might find a use case for it. Maybe actually one of the use cases might be a monitoring and also being able to take an action based on the output of the snapshot.
Yeah, so for example, you might, within a playbook, you might want to loop over this information and just keep on doing retries until you'll see device added is not equal to 0 or device removed is not equal to 0. Going forward, we do use it in a playbook down here, and what it does is it will check when we start a new snapshot. We then loop over that snapshot ID to check if it's finished. So that's where you could use it. So you can start a snapshot, loop over it until you get the status of done, and then it means IP Fabric's finished the discovery, and we're good to go.
Yep, sounds good.
And that can be seen here, this little bit of chunk of code here. I will go back to the snapshots. So that shows us getting some information about a singular snapshot which can be used going forward, and I'll demonstrate that more later. Next we have a snapshot module. It's snapshot without the underscore info, and we have a few different functionalities of this. If we go to our documentation, it describes some of those functionalities within there under the state. So we have present. If present's there, it will start a new snapshot. It will kick off a new snapshot. If it's absent and a snapshot ID has been provided, it will delete a snapshot. We can do load, unload, lock, unlock, clone, rediscover. So let's say you've automated a device, one device within a snapshot, and you want to refresh that data within IP Fabric without a totally new snapshot. We can provide the ability with the rediscover is select the snapshot ID and you pass the serial number, and it will only rediscover that single device within the snapshot. So a few different functionalities. So what I'll do now is I'll get the snapshot ID of our most recent one, and I will clone it. So I'll just get this prepared up on the screen. 2.snapshot. We'll go both screens, and if we press go, we should see a notification that a snapshot has been cloned, and we can see here that the snapshot is rediscovering, redoing the calculations because it's been cloned, and we can see that that snapshot is basically ready to go now. once it's in the cloning process, what the Ansible module does is make sure that it's totally finished cloning, and then it returns some data from that snapshot before it says it's changed. So we can see in the output of that code, it says it's changed, so it's created a snapshot, and we're all good to go. And that snapshot is here. It says broken NTP 1.1.1.1 clone. Now, what if you want to change information within that snapshot? We also provide the ability to do that. So, for example, we can change the name of and notes of a snapshot. For example, this here shows we're going to change the name to Hello Webinar, and this is a clone snapshot. So let's do that. Run that. And unfortunately, this doesn't update on the UI automatically. You have to just do a quick refresh. But this is useful in case you've started a new snapshot and you maybe want to rename it within your Ansible playbook, for example, or change the notes, like added X device to this added X configuration to this device. We can see Hello Webinar, and the notes now are saying that this is a clone snapshot now, which is great. Awesome. So, last little one before we move on and talk about the tables is being able to load and unload. So we'll take the snapshot ID of the last snapshot and we'll do unload, and we'll run that, and we should see it in the UI here. Yeah, it's just unloaded, and then we can just put load, run that again, and we can load the snapshot. And under hood, it's using the Python SDK that you've been used to using. It uses all the same logic, which is great. So we can see it redoing the calculations, building the network topologies, etc., which is good. Any questions so far, Martin?
No, it seems really straightforward to use, so
good.
No questions.
Good. This is the next bit, is the real fun part, is being able to get the data that IP Fabric is returning via the API into Ansible to be able to automate. So an example of that is we might want to pull back, let's say, the devices table. And now to get that, you'd have to press a question mark, fill in some parameters over API, and do a post request. IP Fabric has the Ansible collection has a module called Table Info, and it asks for a bunch of information. So first off, we have a parameter called technology, and these technology matches with the technology that goes down the left hand side here. And every technology has a corresponding table that goes with that technology. So for this one, we'll be using inventory. So that's here. And then we'll be using devices, which belongs to inventory, to get this one. So if we go to our VS Code, we can see here that this is what the code looks like. Table info, we provide the login information. Again, that could be environment variables. Provide a snapshot ID, so you can provide a snapshot, a specific one. By default, it will do the latest. We can then specify the technology, so we're going for inventory, and then the table, and then we're just using the basic functionality of Ansible to register that output as a variable. And then what we can do here, just to show we can use that data, what we're going to do is loop over the returned items and just print it as a debug message. Very basic commands. I'll just comment out this information here, and we'll go to PB3, run that. So a lot of output there, but it's debugged. You can see the entire result in the message, but the debug message says the host name of C1XR02 is vendor of Cisco. So you can easily get that information. Now, what you might want to do going forward is, let's take a common example of you need to find the IP address of a MAC address, let's say. Now let's just find a MAC address for us to use, a random one. That one, we'll copy that. In IP Fabric it's very easy. We have all the MAC addresses tables and ARP tables of every device. But if you need to do that via Ansible, we also have you covered. We have, I'll just show you the snippet of code that we use. So in this instance, we're using the same module. We're going to the addressing technology. We're going to the ARP table. We'll do a filter, so anything that any ARP entry that has this MAC address, we want to return specific columns. So this shows we can do filters as well as returning specific columns. We're going to register that, and then we're just going to MAC address. We're going to do a debug that shows the MAC address and where that belongs and what interface it belongs to. Very simple. There we go. So we've got multiple responses to this MAC address having an IP address. That's because it's a virtual lab, and MAC addresses get get pretty complicated in virtual labs. But we return the list, so we'll return everything that matches. We got MAC address of this, has an IP of 172.16.5.21, and it belongs to this host name on this interface, VLAN 1005. Now, I've seen this. This is a common demo that a lot of people use to demonstrate automation to log into a bunch of devices to see where that MAC address lives. Now,
yeah, I can actually see a use case not just for finding IP address, MAC address, to be honest,
yep.
but this kind of searching for information that you have on your network is a great opportunity for collaboration between teams. Maybe you can use, Ansible automation platform or tools like that, where you don't expose the full access to IP Fabric, but you just via the job templates expose certain information that people can use or other teams can use in their workflows, which is truly powerful.
Yeah, exactly. You might use the automation engine to have a job template that asks for a MAC address, and then it will email them maybe a PDF or a list of information about where that IP address belongs, or DM them on Slack or Teams or what have you about where that lives. Again, you don't need to dive right into the code, but again, you could use the Red Hat automation platform or tower to do that. And the last one is demonstration wise. If we go back to VS Code, I'll comment this old example out, is being able to get information about a table that has different intent verification rules. So the main selling point of IP Fabric is that we can provide intent verification over the data we collect, and we can demonstrate this. I've got one set up, and if we go to management, NTP, we've got an intent verification rule at the top, and what this does is checks that devices have the correct NTP server configured. Very basic, but it shows we've got 29 uncompliant devices. So this snippet of code here will go to the management technology. It will fetch the NTP summary table. It will match a filter that says look for uncompliant devices, and you can find that out easy by selecting your filter and pressing the question mark, and then we can copy that the filter in there, and also the report, so we can see that the report is also specified, and we register this to a variable, and then we will print that out. So let's give that a go. So it shows here it's just listed over the 29 devices, and it says device C1XR06 is not compliant. NTP is currently configured as, and it will give you what the device is currently configured as. Very quick, very easy. Any questions at the minute?
No.
Awesome. So what we're going to do now is demonstrate how to use this in practice when you're trying to auto-remediate based on these non-compliant intent verification rules. So I'll talk over the playbook and what it does. It uses a dynamic inventory and a bit more. So first off, we want to do the same query we did in the previous example, get the non-compliant NTP devices. It will then show us number of non-compliant devices and give us a number, so it should say 29 in our example. I've commented out Junos because having some issues with the Junos lab at the minute, but we got EOS and iOS. So
you are still sharing the IP Fabric screen.
Sorry. There we go. Sorry about that. So I'll go through that again. At the top we have the same as before. We'll show the debug message of number of non-compliant devices. It should show 29. We've got configuring Juniper out of the question because that issues in our Juniper lab. But for EOS and iOS, what we're doing is looping over the returned data from the NTP query, and then we're saying when the network operating system is equal to EOS, we will then use this module to automate that device, and we'll only automate the device if the returned data from the NTP result is equal to that device that we're currently using the dynamic inventory for. So it's a bit complicated on the when statement, but it's very simple when you break it down. It could be done a lot easier. We do the same for iOS. We just changed the network operating system to iOS. We then re-snapshot the entire environment. We check and then return non-compliant, see if it's fixed the issues. So let's give that a go. So to get that to work, any questions on that before we run it?
Not really. I think the when statement that you showed is kind of, well, as you mentioned, on the first look it looks kind of complicated,
Yeah.
but when you break it down, it's actually straightforward. You are just verifying two different variables for a equal statement.
Yeah.
Just that working through that dictionary on the right side, it might look scary, but
Yeah.
really if person is or an engineer is used to that, it's just matter of breaking that down into individual statements, and then it's pretty much readable.
Yeah, and the reason we're doing that is that we're looping over two things here, right? Each task iterates per inventory item, but you also have the looping over the data that's returned from the NTP query. So it could be done in a more efficient manner, but this is a quick and dirty way I've got it working. So we just match the item in the NTP table returned to the device that we're currently on, and we're trying to automate. So let's give that a go. I've written the command here, Ansible playbook, select the dynamic inventory and the playbook to be fixed. And what I will do is I will bring up the snapshot screen. So it says number of non-compliant devices 29. That matched with our IP Fabric. So it's yellow, so it's changing things on the network devices, which is good. Hopefully we don't get any issues connecting to the devices. So it's trying to fix 29 devices. It should be pretty quick. And as we can see in IP Fabric here, discovery has now started. And then we have the check snapshot module running that will try it every 30 seconds, and it'll try up to 20 times, and it'll check to see if that snapshot has completed. So we can see devices are rediscovering now on the right hand side, which is great. And there's some things in here you might notice, like for example, our start snapshot has run once true. Because we're going over a dynamic inventory, we don't want to start 29 snapshots. We only want to run it once, and we want to run it from the local host, so we say delegate to. So just some other bits and pieces in there as well.
The other option eventually would be running rediscover, right? For only those devices that actually have changed.
Exactly. So if you've got a very large snapshot, we don't in our example, it's 29 devices, so snapshot runs pretty quickly. What you can do is clone the snapshot and then rediscover using the serial numbers that you've got in your dynamic inventory of devices you've actually changed. So if you could register the variable of this configured part, and then if it's changed, only rediscover the device that's changed, for example. And then that could speed up the discovery process.
Or you can have the rediscover as a handler in Ansible.
Exactly, yes. So that's completed now, so let's scroll up to the top. It failed to configure one device, that should be okay. So check the snapshot. Looks like our lookup plugin failed for some reason. So I'll show you that in the bottom. So we have table info as a module, but we also provide the same functionality as a lookup plugin. So lookup, community fabric, table info. You select the tables and technology you want with the sources, etc. It looks like that one failed for some reason, but the snapshot completed. I need to look into that. So we've got this new snapshot here, and if we go to technology management NTP, we can see that we have 29 compliant devices and 0 uncompliant devices. The devices that are not configured are Junos devices that we're currently having network issues with in the lab, but every device that we did configure is now compliant with what we wanted to configure, which is great. So what I will do is I will quickly just demonstrate the failed lookup plugin that did fail. I'll just demonstrate lookup.yml. I'll just go into VS Code here. So I'll delete all the tasks that I don't want to run just to demonstrate it. No idea why it failed then. So the only thing we need to provide is a snapshot ID, because we normally get that via that. We don't actually need to do that because by default it gets the latest. Or if we go back, delete that. And if we do pb.for.lookup, localhost. See, it should number of non-compliant devices 0. Not sure why it failed on the other one. Maybe I didn't wait enough time for the snapshot to be fully loaded. But we can see that lookup plugin works. It's the same as doing a standard module lookup, just different way of doing it. But this allows you to do it within a Ginger template if you really wanted to use a lookup plugin, which is good. So that's a quick overview. Again, we're available on Community Fabric, GitHub, also on Ansible Galaxy, and we have documentation available. And feel free to check it out. Any questions, Martin?
No, well,
insights, anything?
I try to provide, ask questions as you want, and also provide my input or insights as you want as well. So I don't really have anything to ask at this moment. I definitely am sure that we will try the new Ansible collection.
Great.
I can see numerous use cases where it actually fits our automation and would simplify our life. So thank you for releasing that, and Well, if we have any questions or any feedback as we go, we will definitely reach out.
Perfect, thank you. It's been great having you on the webinar, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.